It's important to remember why Americans for Prosperity engages in politics to begin with. It's because public policy matters, and partisanship is preventing good public policy. So we set out to do things differently and more effectively. But before getting into political strategy, I want to share an update on two courageous people who demonstrate why what you do in public policy is so important. If you were here last summer, you won't ever forget Matt and Caitlin Bellina. Matt was suffering from ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. When he was diagnosed, he was 30 years old, a Navy fighter pilot, and a father to 3 young boys. There's no cure for ALS. 80% of patients die within 5 years. Last summer, Matt was in year 4. Matt and Caitlin weren't just here for themselves. They were representing everyone else who could benefit from repealing a law that made it illegal for terminally ill patients to try experimental treatments that could save their lives. Those of you who were here last summer will remember seeing a video that we'd made with Matt and Caitlin 3 years earlier when we first met them to raise awareness about this issue. We thought we'd play a short clip from that video for those of you who were unable to meet them last year.
It's like a slap in the face, especially since he's a veteran. Like, okay, you wanted him to strap a rocket to his back and go fly to defend the country, but now when it's his turn and something's wrong with him, you're like, yeah, sorry, it's too dangerous for you to try that.
I'm okay with the fact that I might die of this disease, but the fact that it's gonna keep on going and going like this, and that there's 6,000 almost people every year being diagnosed with this, and that's just ALS. We start broadening it out to everything else, all these other terminal illnesses that we could be curing, and yet we're still doing trials the same way we were in 1950.
I think a government organization that's set up to help the people, if it's not working, they need to figure out a way to make it work, because this isn't working. They're there to help us, not to hurt us. And right now, at least ALS patients, they're hurting them.
It's unimaginable what it must feel like to face a barrier like that. And despite Matt and Caitlin's tireless support on behalf of all terminally ill patients, Congress refused to act. Even though 85% of Americans supported the legislation, even though majorities of Republicans and Democrats in Congress supported it. The fact of the matter was, neither party wanted to give the other a win. It was rank partisanship, and it was disgraceful. But you heard Caitlin say, if government is not working for people, then people need to find a way to make it work. That's what this group set out to do last spring. Rather than double down on the partisan approach that had resulted in stalemate, you supported us to find a more effective way, helping to build a nonpartisan policy coalition of lawmakers that wanted to do the right thing. This group made real investments to launch a major media effort, including a national TV ad that thanked policymakers from both parties who were leading on this issue, and called on the rest of their colleagues to act. We also upped the pressure on key lawmakers who were holding things up. Our grassroots teams made so many phone calls to their constituents that one of them called us and said, enough, you've made your point, we're trying to get this done. And then a few weeks later, Congress passed the legislation and sent it to the president's desk. Because this group did things differently, we won. Matt and Caitlin, all of you, and thousands of families, we won. By last summer, yeah, you deserve a round of applause. So by last summer, which was 2 years after the video you just saw, Matt's condition had deteriorated significantly. He struggled with his speech and he was wheelchair bound. Nonetheless, he was determined to be here and thank you for what you had done. Those of you who were here, you'll remember Matt's impassioned remarks, and you'll remember the incredible news that Caitlin shared with us, that because of this reform, they just learned that Matt had been granted access to the experimental treatments that they'd been seeking for years. So here he is on his first day of treatment wearing his Americans for Prosperity socks. And they both cautioned that despite their excitement, the future was still entirely unknown. Well, just 1 month after he began this treatment, Matt posted a video on Facebook of him doing something that doctors said he would never do again. Here he is, standing for the first time in 2 years. Just a few days ago, he also texted us to let us know he can now do this without support. It's incredible. And when you play this story out thousands upon thousands of times over, for people today and for decades to come, it makes you realize just how much what you do matters, how much public policy matters. And that's why this group won't let partisanship prevent good policy that matters for people's lives. You've heard this weekend, that victory, it wasn't an anomaly. We've proved that across many issues, building policy coalitions is more effective than partisanship. You built a nonpartisan policy coalition to achieve historic criminal justice reforms, and today thousands of deserving people have been given a second chance and are home with their families. You built a nonpartisan policy coalition to achieve reforms to the Department of Veterans Affairs, and today over 9 million veterans have greater access to better health care. Each of these reforms passed with overwhelming support in an otherwise polarized Washington. This is working. And thanks to the infrastructure that you've built over the past 16 years, you've put this group in a position to chart a new course in effective public policy and more productive politics. There's a lot of good policy that right now is not being passed. It's because people who want to do the right thing don't have the support to do it. Going forward, they will. We'll be there to support any lawmaker who's willing to stick their neck out and lead, even and especially when it's the politically difficult thing to do, whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, or have any other letter after your name. So what does that look like? It means doing things differently, more effectively, going bigger. So grassroots. If you're a policymaker who's taking heat back at home because you took a tough but principled vote, our grassroots activists will bring the heat right back, making phone calls, sending mail, and going door to door to tell your constituents that what you're doing is making their lives better and their communities stronger. Political action committees. If you've got the courage to confront the extremes and lead on an issue like immigration or free trade or free speech, there are new political action committees that will enable millions of Americans to support you financially. Primary elections. If you have the backbone to stand up to special interests and then they target you in your next primary election, we'll be there to have your back. General elections. If you're someone who steps up and leads across many critical issues, you can be darn sure that we're going to bring all of our capabilities to bear to help you win your next general election. No doubt, some will say this is impossible. And those it threatens, the people who benefit from the current divisiveness, they will attack us. That some already are is recognition of the fact that this is working. But they will not stop us, or the millions of Americans who want to move beyond the partisanship and are ready to unite to tackle the greatest challenge of our time. And if that's you, if you're someone who knows that policy matters and you're frustrated by the current options, this is an open invitation to join us. Republicans, Democrats, everyone. Let's put people over partisanship. Let's forge this new path together. Let's stand together to help every person rise. Thank you.